and transform the communities that we live, work, and play in, one relationship at a time.
Okay, guys, welcome back for another segment of Real Estate 101. For you guys that have not checked in with us before, or don't follow me as of right now. One of the things I really want to do is, being in the real estate industry, is kind of open people's perspective up a little bit more to other things that you can do. So for instance, when we speak real estate, a lot of times people think of investor or realtor or something in that lane, but there's so many other facets of this industry that you can get involved in and really create a niche for yourself. And so I want to do my part in introducing some of the people, players, and professions that you can get a little bit more acquainted with, that might more so align with you, because every role isn't for everyone. So, the more you know, the more you grow, right? Take it back to that. So, last segment, we talked to a planner. And for those of you all aren't familiar with urban planning, essentially it's a study of city development, but there's so many aspects just in that one profession within the real estate industry. So we have another planner on the call with us today. Malina, if you could introduce yourself, and hopefully we can learn a bit more about you and your role in the industry.
Okay. My name is Malina Springer. I am the Community Development Manager at a small development consulting firm in Nashville, Tennessee, Pillars Development. We do consulting for any aspect of development. So we help out if somebody wants to find a lot to develop on, if someone needs owner's representation as they're developing on the lot. We also do the entitlements process, help people walk through that. And we also do a lot of the community engagement. So actually reaching out to the community, dealing with council members, planning commissioners, and make sure that people's projects get approved while displacing as few people as possible.
Like that's the grind work that no one sees on social media nowadays, right?
Yeah.
And like all those things you said are like all specialties within themselves, really. So that's pretty cool. You get to get exposed to all those things. Within that spectrum, you said you're in Nashville, right? So I'm pretty sure we're in Houston, very different markets. Kind of, you named a couple of things. So is there something specific that you focus in and doing in the firm?
Yeah, so primarily my team now, our community development team, has kind of found our niche in doing community engagement. So our firm really, as we are a small firm, started by and pretty much run by Black people in Nashville. There's a lot of gentrification, a lot of displacement in Nashville. So we've kind of just by default, and because this is where our passion lies, kind of been in that community engagement space. So a lot of what we've been doing these last couple years is helping out large developers, normally out-of-state developers, and larger planning firms who are doing studies, master plan studies in Nashville, to really get to know Nashvillians and really get within the community, figure out what their wants and needs are, and make sure that they're realizing that the people here are humans who
Right.
have hurts and who want to be where they are and not be moved out of where they are. So what I honestly I feel like what we do is we humanize the people who are being affected
That's
by
good.
these plans.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Sometimes real estate development does boil down to dollars and cents, and we get detached from who we're actually serving in the development.
Mhm.
And I think that's pretty cool. I always like to tell people, maybe like kind of be like 5 to 7 years ago, here in Houston, my big push was like, hey, you guys, if you're planners, don't just focus on the public sector, because a lot of us come out of, grad school or our bachelor's, whatever the case is, and we're running to find this regional or community and regional planning job, which is nothing wrong with it, but there's so many other aspects. And I remember telling a lot of folks coming out of different programs, um, go find developers and smaller firms that are on the ground, because as this country really grows and becomes more dense, gentrify, all these kind of things, we're going to need like this micro planning approach on the ground. It's bottom up approach. And so the top down is I don't say it's not working anymore, but it's done its job, right?
Yeah.
It's really done its job, but we have to meet it halfway. So I think that's pretty cool what you're doing out there. We do something kind of similar, some similar things here. So uh, we run into a lot of when you talk about community planning and engagement, we run into a lot of interesting scenarios. Kind of, if you could kind of paint a picture a little bit when you say community planning and engagement, like what does that look like?
So it can look a number of different ways. My gripe with community engagement in general is that I feel like a lot of people just use it as a checkbox, like, oh yeah, I'm going to develop in this. Yeah, I talk to the neighbors. But what we really do is we actually take the time to create like a stakeholder engagement plan. So we actually look at the neighborhood, we look at the development, we look at the people who are either going to be impacted by the development or will possibly be interested in what is being placed there, create a list, kind of figure out who's going to be interested and to what level and what kind of communication we'll need to have with them. So if, for example, we're doing a large mall redevelopment in Antioch, which is a southern suburb of Nashville. And with that one, it's a dead mall. It's currently used for a few things, a library, a community center. There's a community college there as well. But it was previously used for minority businesses. After the mall died, minority business owners came in there and they used the space. Also in that part of Nashville, we have a large Kurdish community and a large Latina community. So part of what we've done in our community engagement is we've hired locals to that area so they're subcontracting under our community engagement scope, and they just go out into the community and do the work for us. So we're paying them to have the conversations they would already be having with their neighbors, with their friends. They show up to the same sporting events they show up to. They pop up at churches that they already go to. So that's really
that's empowering. That's really
yes.
empowering. Like,
Yeah. So that's how
Okay.
we've approached it differently than we think others have. We're really empowering the people who are there. And in doing so, we've been able to show up to prayers, Friday morning prayers, and actually like speak to people where they are.
So I want to stop right there for a second,
Mhm.
because I want to highlight like how important it is, right? That you guys have figured that part out. Because for those that don't know, when we talk about urban planning, especially from the aspect of community engagement, in the past, that was very hard to connect the planner and what's going on, the planning to the people, right? And it would be not just a checkbox, but a lot of times the people will be hesitant to even show up, engage, and share information that actually benefits them, right? But it's because no one really found a way to connect with them. And I think one key thing that you said is like we empower them, we pay them, we provide the tools, the resources, some training. So even beyond the project, once you guys pull out, so to speak, like most developers and corporations, companies do, once you pull out, they're still left with some type of skill set, um, some type of skill that they can still build their community or work on the next parcel or the next initiative on. And I think that's really unique. I think that's pretty cool. That's awesome. So,
Yeah.
um, so let me ask you, it was something I want to touch on in seeing, kind of running through your LinkedIn somewhat.
Mhm.
I see that you are AICP certified. So
Yeah.
a lot of people probably don't really know what that is. If you could, kind of just give us a brief overview. What does that mean to be AICP certified?
So AICP accreditation is pretty much saying I'm an accredited planner. So there are all these aspects of planning that I've studied up on and that I'm knowledgeable of. To me, AICP, what means the most to me about it is the code of ethics. And in that code of ethics, it tells you how you are to plan. So it tells you the people that you need to keep in mind, the consequences that you need to keep in mind. And pretty much it's making sure that you aren't planning for anyone's selfish reasons. When you're planning, you're thinking about the world as a whole, the community as a whole. And with AICP, there's a big focus on empowering those who have not been empowered. So for me, that's really what I take to heart the most from my AICP accreditation. For others, it is just like they see that at the end of my name and they're like, okay, she knows what she's doing. So professionally, it definitely helps. But for me, it's that code of ethics that really kind of runs how I do stuff. So it holds me to it when I want to take the easy way out and I'm like, oh, it's taken too long to get in touch with people, like let's just do this, whatever. It reminds me that no, Malina, like you signed this, you said this is how you're going to do things, you have to keep pushing. So that's really the two ways that you can look at it.
Well, so that's interesting because I think, so I just rejoined APA, the American Planning Association, for you guys that aren't aware. It is a trade or membership organization that a lot of planners join. It's our network, our membership organization for the most part. And they're the ones that issue those AICP designations or certifications rather. And so I don't know if on your end, but at least on my end, I'm, being a broker, real estate broker, I'm on the ground. Some things are very transactional and things like that. But I know amongst circles that I'm in sometimes, there's this divide amongst like AICP or not to have AICP, what's important, what's not important. But more importantly, sometimes it seems as if that within our industry, on some level, if you are not AICP certified, even though you may be a very legitimate planner, sometimes you're not taken as seriously, so to speak.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that's the notion? And do you feel like that's how we should kind of, I guess, interact with one another?
Personally,
Should that be the standard, or should we be, what's your take on
I
that?
don't want APA to come after me for this. But no, personally, I don't think AICP has anything to do with how legitimate of a planner you are. It's really how good you are at taking tests. I know plenty of amazing planners who had to take it 2 or 3 times to pass. People have test anxiety. It is what it is. But I will say people do take what you say more seriously when they see the AICP. They're like, oh, okay, she knows what she's talking about. So in that regard, it's like, especially on the private side, definitely helps to have that AICP after your name, especially when you're bidding for jobs. But in terms of hiring, I'm not going to not hire someone because they don't have AICP. Yeah.
And I think the difference is there's AICP or PhD, right? And then there's this divide. There's AICP and PhD that are active, right? Active, meaning on the ground, you're doing the work and different things like that. And then I think there's a divide of PhD AICP, which is just credential. And I think that's where the confusion gets, a little bit hairy, so to speak. But that's a good way to look at it. That's a really good way to look at it. So people ask me sometimes, should they get their AICP? And I always answer, where are you trying to go?
Right.
What are you trying to do, so to speak? I, for a number of reasons, like you're saying, I probably need to be studying for mine right now. So I may have to tap you for some study tips or whatever the case is. But it's very helpful in terms of contracting, especially when you're a smaller firm, because there's so many huge firms that have been around for so long that you're competing with. So thank you for that. Now I like to kind of shift a little bit and get to know a little bit more about you and some of the situations you've been in. And so I always like to ask people, like, tell me a funny, a unique story. Like, what stands out to you in your career that you're like, either it tickled you in that's how things happen. It was kind of startling, but it was funny in how it happened. Is there anything that you've had in your career that just really stands out to you that like you always remember because it was so funny, so interesting?
Yes, it's funny now. at the
It's
time,
funny now.
it was definitely terrifying. So this goes back to when my first job as a planner. So prior to coming to the private side, I worked for local government, like you said, came out of college, was like, oh, I have to work for government. So I worked in Mesquite, Texas, so suburb of Dallas. And there was a couple who wanted to build something on their property. At the time when I was there, I was planner one and neighborhood planner. So I worked a lot in our target neighborhoods. And a couple wanted to build something on their lot, I think maybe a carport or something like that. I made the mistake of saying they could, presented it to the Board of Adjustment and was like, yeah, this is good. The board voted against it. The couple was furious. So they came in, sat down with me and my director, and they were just yelling at me. And here I am, I'm like 23 years old, just like
Thought it was over.
yes. And I was freaking out. Thankfully, my director was an amazing man, and he like helped calm everything down and like walked me over to the side later and like calmed me down. But afterward, I went and I looked through our ordinance and I realized like, oh, they can't build that anyway. But it was just, I had not done the research and sat down and like really paid attention. I was just kind of like I said, just checking boxes, like, yep, okay, got to get this case done. But in that moment, I reached out to our legal team and I was like, hey, look, I messed up. I misread this. I owned up to it.
Okay.
And because of that, my boss was not upset with me. He just reached out to the couple and was like, look, sorry, it can't happen. So looking back.
So looking back, it's
yes.
like that. I can imagine that scene.
Yes.
Very much so.
Absolutely terrifying. So. But like thinking back on it, it's like just the way that everything happened was like, okay, I finished the report, presented, they were angry at the hearing, but many people are. Then they show up, they're angry, they start yelling, had never experienced that before. And then I'm like trying to prove them wrong. And I go back to my desk and wind up proving them right, but also proving me wrong. It was, so I learned to own up to my mistakes on that day.
And it's funny you said they were yelling at the hearing, they were yelling. Like, if you haven't been to a hearing, there is yelling and emotional outbursts at times. The devil is in the detail with his work. You're talking about people's land, there's sometimes their livelihood, so it does get pretty tricky. And if you're presenting some things like that, I can imagine that it gets pretty hairy for you. You probably feel for the folks that are applying for things.
Definitely.
But you have this duty that you have to uphold. So would you consider that or any other time like one of your hardest obstacles or defining moments that really said, you know what, I can do this. I chose right. This is where I'm supposed to be. I can do this.
Yeah, I would say it was working in local government and having to present these cases that people weren't happy about. That was when I was like, okay, I can handle this.
I can handle it.
Yeah.
So what brought you over to the dark side, so the private side of things?
So it was a long journey. I'm obsessed with learning, like always trying to get better at what I do. So I moved around a lot because I was like, okay, this is the best way to get experience. And my last role before going private was a community in Virginia, and we were redoing our comprehensive plan. So I was the project manager, kind of like leading all of the engagement, leading all the research, everything. And in doing the engagement, we didn't have the time, because we were doing it in-house, we didn't have the time or the money to do intensive community engagement. And I realized that there was a population that was getting missed out on. And so it was in that I realized, like, okay, so maybe local government isn't the best way to empower people. So after that, I actually switched over. First, I went to Houston for a while and I did urban design work there. But then I was reached out to by this firm in Nashville. And we just aligned on, I was like, I really want to empower the community. So to me, it doesn't feel like the dark side. I feel like I do. And the thing is, when I was on when I was on the public side, I said it all the time, like, there you go on the dark side. But now that I'm over here, like the amount of consulting I do for local governments and the amount of help I give to local governments to reach out to the community, I really feel as though I can make more change and help the community more on this side than I could when I was restricted by what the mayor, what the city council wanted.
That's interesting to say that the part I heard very loudly, the government was not the way to empower the people,
Yeah.
right? This democratic process is set up for our voices to be heard is not the way to empower people, that you ran into those hurdles. To me, that's what I kind of call one of those, like, come on, man. Like, I like to watch these old sports shows and talk shows, and there used to be one called, they used to always say, come on, man, whatever the case is. That's one of those moments for me when something really happens, it stands out. It's like, what is going on? That's really interesting. So it sounds like you've moved around. I don't know if that was all strategic or some of it organic, but in that, can you kind of speak to that? Like, how did that ebb and flow? Was it more you really consciously saying, I'm going to seek out these opportunities, or how did things kind of flow to get you where you are?
Well, some of it was by choice. My husband used to be in the military. So when I moved from that first job to still working in local government to then doing military-based planning, it was because he was in the military and I wanted a job where he was. So I got to then go work for the federal government, which was a whole nother beast in itself. But it gave me a lot of experience. I was the only planner, again, very young, I think maybe 25, 26 at the time, the only planner on base working with a bunch of engineers and a bunch of pilots who don't care about planning. So it was fun. It was a challenge and a lot of fun to me to have to go explain to these generals or like wing commanders, like colonels, why it mattered that this base be oriented this way and this is how it should be phased, and we need to apply for this funding from Congress at this point in time. Especially because with the way the military is run, I'm not sure how aware all of you are of the military, but the base commanders are there for like 2 years. So for them, 2 years and they're gone, they're moving on. So they're just trying to make sure everything works.
You're thinking long term.
Right. So I'm thinking 20, 30 years and they're thinking 2 years. So going up in front of these men in uniform where everyone stands when they walk in, and I'm walking in like a skirt and a bright pink top, and I'm like, we need. So it was fun to really have to work on my words and figure out how to pitch an idea to someone who didn't care at all about what was going to happen 18 years after they left. So for me, that was the great challenge of that one. But then afterward, I realized like all of my planning had pretty much been in policy and kind of like the land use stuff, but I hadn't done any research. And so that's why I did strategically look for that position where I'd be doing the project management and doing a lot of the research behind the comprehensive plan. I wanted to learn how to lead a team and learn how to pull the pieces together, work that I hadn't done since grad school. And then again, the move to Houston was also strategic because I didn't know how to work in CAD. I hadn't done CAD works again since grad school. I hadn't had to lay out a plan in forever. So for me, it was like I really wanted to beef up my repertoire. I wanted to figure out how to be the best planner I could be, because if someone comes to me with an idea and I can't draw it out for them, like how are they going to understand what I'm trying to explain to them? So I knew the policy side. I just needed to really figure out the design side. And then the move to Nashville, honestly, I was planning on staying in Houston for the rest of my life. I love Houston.
Oh, man, we lost you. We lost you to
I
Nashville.
know, I miss it. I might be back. I love it. But this move was really, when I talked to the principal of the firm, just when he was talking about his desires for the firm, and they didn't have a planning department. So it was a challenge of, okay, let's see if I can start my own department. So it was just a challenge that I hadn't had before.
Cool.
Yeah. So this one was really just like, let's see if I can do this. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think people think that I'm crazy because I do my best to blend the two worlds together, this
Mhm.
brokerage, and so I have agents running around, but also still doing a lot of project work with my planning colleagues,
That's
and
cool.
hope to be able to employ some planners directly in the future where we're one big happy family because they
Mhm.
do go very much so hand in
Very
hand.
much, very much.
So that's pretty interesting, that story. I feel like mine. I took some similar. I have some similarities that I won't go into, but um, you kind of shared a lot in terms of like what your roadmap has been, and even some of these scenarios that you've been in, especially being a woman in planning. I think the last person I talked to was the same thing. She's a woman in planning, and you guys have a very unique challenge in essentially with planning being tied to real estate and real estate really being tied to um like an older kind of white
Mhm.
uh big pockets, especially when we talk about like major development. um
Yeah.
so I kind of want to pick your brain or see if there are some things you can share with people in terms of like um just some advice or tips and kind of navigating this industry if they choose to go the route of planning, so to speak, if that's the way they want to go. And like I said, I heard you talk about learning how to articulate yourself differently,
Mhm.
and things like that. Is there anything that really stands out that you feel like, please, if you anything else?
Um, it's gonna feel, especially I'm a very shy, introverted person. I know I don't project that way, but this is all a facade. But I had to learn from the beginning to not show fear because you're in these
Hmm,
meetings with people with so much money and you're telling them, look, you can't do this, or maybe you should approach it this way. Uh, and you're having these big corporations saying, like, no, we're not going to do that. That's not how we do it. We haven't done that in any other city in the whole world. And you're telling
this,
them, no, you have to do it this way. Like, this is how we have to do it. So it's learning to pretend you're not afraid. Like, you know what you know. The reason they're coming to you is because you are the professional. You know exactly what you know and don't back down. But also, unlike me when I was younger, do your research first to make sure you actually know what you're thinking. But really it's been about showing no fear.
okay,
Because there have been so many meetings where I've shown up to where people have asked, like, are you the secretary? Or they don't
wow,
expect me to be the one giving them the answers. So really it's just, yes, that stuff hurts. You go home, you complain to your friends about it, but you don't let them see that they've hurt you. You're just like, nope, I'm the principal planner. I'm managing this project, and just
wow,
no fear. So that's really been, for me, I think what has helped me get to where I am in my career. Like, yes, I've moved around a lot, but each time I had to advocate for myself, especially when it comes to salary, having to advocate for yourself when you don't look like anybody else on staff. And they're probably thinking like, oh, we can pay her less. So yeah, no fear, advocate, cry at home when nobody can see you.
okay, okay. No, I think that's good. That's good. I think, especially as a male in the industry, it's not something that we, I think about, honestly. You're just used to going in and saying what you're gonna say, and that's it, and not really thinking about what that consequence might be. So like I think that's a perspective that I feel like needs to be shared a lot more. And when you think about planning, it's a very small percentage is women, honestly.
Yeah.
So we need more in this space because you guys are better than us. I'm just honestly, yeah,
Hey, you said it, not me.
you guys are better than us at the end of the day. But okay, well, no, I definitely appreciate the time checking in. I think, I every now and then I put kind of a call out to LinkedIn or different social media profiles, and you were one of the people that raised your hand, like, hey, I'll talk about planning, sure.
Mhm.
And so, or just, things that are applied to real estate industry. So I definitely Appreciate your input, your perspective, and even some of the things, I learned a bit today and got a little bit of inspiration too. I have two little girls, so I have some things to go teach them. No fear.
No fear.
No fear. So, you are in Nashville, but you also are online. Uh, I think you share what company you're with, but like, how can people find you or maybe reach out to you if they see this and they're like, I like to talk to her, maybe kind of understand something else of what you were saying.
The best way? I'll probably say my LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on there. I think it's M Springer. So first initial, last name, or you can just search my name. It's relatively unique, Malina Springer on LinkedIn. Or you can email me at my work address because I check that one. Personal, not so much. So malina@pillarsdevelopment.com. So either of those I'll definitely respond to.
And guys, if you find her on LinkedIn, don't be alarmed. It's not the curly hair. She's just got to kind of pull it back, but it's her. Okay, it's her.
I do. It's pulled back and I think it's black. It's not
Yeah,
blonde.
yeah. So it's her. It's her. It's the same
Yeah.
person. Okay. So, no, thank you again.